Good afternoon to one and all present here. On behalf of Team Techkriti', I welcome you all to today's session of Techtalks. The first speaker for today is Mr. Peter Atkins. Peter Atkins began his academic life as an undergraduate at the University of Leicester and remained there for his PhD. He then went to the University of California, Los Angeles as a Harkness Fellow and then returned to Oxford as a lecturer in physical chemistry and Fellow of the Lincoln College. He remained as a professor of chemistry until he retired in 2007. He has received several doctorates from various universities across the world, including in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the Russian Federation. He has been a visiting professor at universities in France, Japan, China, New Zealand, and Israel. He was a member of the Council of the Royal Institute and the Royal Society of Chemistry. He was also the founding chairman of the IUPAC, a name even beginners of chemistry are familiar with. His books on physical chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and molecular quantum mechanics has given him worldwide fame. On behalf of Team Techkriti', we welcome you, sir. I would now like to invite Mr. Peter Atkins to address the gathering.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm honoured to be asked to talk to you this afternoon. And I'd like to thank the organising committee for the invitation and for the kind hospitality that you showed. And it's been a great pleasure to meet a lot of you while I've been here. I'm going to talk about everything and nothing. The everything that excuse me. Show me the button to move forward. Okay. You will have to do it. The everything that I'm going to talk about is this. That is the world outside us. And what scientists do when they look at the complexity of the world is to try to formulate the laws of next slide. Next slide, please. They try to formulate a series of statements about the world, which we call the laws of nature. And the laws of nature, as far as I'm concerned, are simply the summaries of experimental observations. So you make observations, you summarize them, sometimes in terms of equations, sometimes in terms simply of words. And the question arises, where do these laws of nature come from? Now, there are philosophers, and even worse, theologians, have spent a lot of time worrying about where the laws of nature come from. A friend of mine, well, a friend in the Facebook sense, but no more than that, who is a well-known philosopher, thinks that the laws of nature are inspired by God, that God pushes every electron in the appropriate direction all the time. Now, I think that God has got better things to do than to push electrons around. He can stop wars and he can stop cancer. But I think that we scientists look for a much simpler explanation than that. So we look at the world and we see beauty. And we're surrounded by this glorious world of ours. But as scientists, we look at the beauty, and we know that underneath that beauty, there lies simplicity. So we scientists really are hewers of simplicity out of complexity. And what I want to do today is to see whether there are very simple explanations for all the laws of nature. So the everything that I'm going to talk about is all the laws which controls the world. The laws of physics, the laws of biology, such as they are, the laws of chemistry, and the laws of anything else. Next. And I think that I have three principles that I'm going to try to use in order to look for the source of the laws of nature. One is indolence, laziness, doing nothing. Can some of the laws actually spring from doing absolutely nothing at all? Next. And maybe the laws of nature, some of them might spring from allowing anything to happen. And so I shall use anarchy as a route to discovering the source of some of the laws of nature. And if indolence and anarchy are not enough to find the source of the laws of nature, I have got one more principle to use, which is ignorance. Can you actually obtain the laws of nature simply by knowing nothing at all? So this is my program, to look for all the laws of nature in terms of these three principles. Now, I need to take you back in time to, this is a scientist's model of history, so with some of the details left out. So there is the universe, which starts somewhere on the left-hand side, and somewhere in there we are, and it also has a future. There is my model of the universe. But it could be that a universe might have children. Other universes might spring from this, from an original universe. And we might be in that particular universe. And some people say, well, universes spring from the properties of the preceding universe. There might be, for example, a quantum fluctuation in the mother universe, which gives rise to a new universe. But I want to concentrate on what might be the original universe, the one right at the beginning of time, which comes from absolutely nothing. So I want to focus your attention on that initial start of the universe, where the universe springs from nothing, from absolutely nothing. So although I've mentioned that I'm going to talk about everything, this is where I'm going to talk about nothing. So when you listen to my talk and go away afterwards, you will have learned a huge amount about absolutely nothing. Next slide. Here's my first example of nothing. And I want to talk about nothing at all. And by nothing at all, I mean not even space, not even time, not empty space, not no time at all. This is absolutely nothing. No space, no time, just absolutely nothing. So I shall try to call that nothing, absolutely nothing. Clear your mind of thinking about empty space. There is no space, no time. This is before the universe came into existence. And the properties of nothing are as follows. It is totally uniform. I mean, you can't have lumps of dense of nothing here and then more spread out nothing over here. So absolutely nothing is completely uniform. Next. It's also totally isotropic. Next. That is, if you go around any point anywhere in nothing, then it doesn't change at all. Okay, so it is nothing, absolutely nothing is isotropic. Next. And it is, of course, totally empty. You can't have anything in nothing. So this is what I mean by nothing. So when I'm going to tell you about nothing at all, this is the nothing at all that I'm going to tell you about. And it's very important nothing. Next. So before the creation, before the universe came into existence, there was absolutely nothing. After the universe came into existence, it evolved into stars, galaxies, and so on. So this is the present-day universe. I want to focus on the next. Yeah, I want to focus on the moment when absolutely nothing turned itself into being something. I'm not going to deny the Big Bang. I'm not going to deny the possibility that inflation took place. I just want to focus on how the initial instance when absolutely nothing turned into absolutely something. So, about the role of indolence, what laws can emerge from absolute laziness, from absolutely doing nothing at all? Next. And the first law, I think, is one of the most important laws of all. It is the conservation of energy. And the conservation of energy is so important because it underlies causality. It's a kind of policeman of events in the world. Things cannot take place if it involves a change of the total amount of energy in the world. Energy, as you all know, is conserved. And what I want to try you to think about is why energy is conserved. And of course, a lot in succession. You all know that there's a simple example of the conservation of energy, where initial kinetic energy is converted into potential energy, and then the kinetic energy restored, but the total energy remains constant. Simple example of the conservation of energy, but the conservation of energy underlies the whole of thermodynamics. It underlies really the whole of physics. So it's a hugely important law, probably the most important law in the universe. But why? Have you ever asked yourself, why is energy conserved? One of the great theorems of science is a German mathematician, Noether. Mathematicians either die close to zero or close to infinity. And she, unfortunately, was a mathematician who died young, close to zero. But at least in the few years that she had on this earth, she formulated a theorem which I'm going to rely on for much of this talk. Noether's theorem says that whenever you have a conservation law, then you have an underlying symmetry. So conservation laws, like the conservation of energy, spring from symmetry. And the particular symmetry that is responsible for the conservation of energy is the uniformity of time. So if time goes tick, 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 so on, uniformly, then energy is conserved on a cosmic scale. Next. If energy were to go was non-uniform, tick, 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 like it seems in some lectures, then energy would not be conserved. So what we've got to do in order to understand the origin of the conservation of energy is to look for the reason why time is uniform. Now, I think that the crucial point is that, remember that absolutely nothing is totally uniform. When the universe comes into existence, the newly formed universe inherits the uniformity of absolutely nothing. And so when the new universe comes into existence, the time that is created at that point is uniform. And then, by Noether's theorem, energy is conserved. So if you do nothing at all when the universe comes into existence, then energy is conserved. I think this is one of the profound roots of the origin of the laws of nature, and in this case, the most important. Next. So, really, I want this part of the talk, indolence, depends upon the inheritance of uniformity. If you inherit the uniformity of absolutely nothing, then you have conservation laws. Next. One of the questions, of course, that arises is where you draw these red lines. How much energy is there in the universe? How much energy does whoever created the universe trust humanity to have? Where do I draw that red line? So the question to ask is, how do you assess the total energy of the universe? Next. Well, you weigh it. You weigh a galaxy, that is, you determine the mass of a galaxy, multiply it by c squared, and get the energy represented by that galaxy. And then you might do it for any of those galaxies and get a certain energy. Do it for another galaxy, do it for another galaxy, and you get, obviously, a huge energy if you do it for every galaxy in the universe. So people would say, what a fantastic amount of energy had to be created at the creation. Where did it all come from? Why have we got so much energy? But you, who are becoming scientists, are also becoming trained to be circumspect. And scientists say, have I been sufficiently circumspect? Next. At this stage, we haven't. Because if you've got two galaxies and they are interacting gravitationally, then that lowers the energy. So go back to this energy. Next. If you allow that galaxy to interact with that galaxy, then it lowers the energy. This galaxy to interact with that galaxy, it lowers the energy. And I think, and this is speculation, if you take into account the interaction between all the galaxies in the universe, and include things like dark matter, dark energy, then it comes all the way down to zero. So in other words, that's where you draw the line. And you can see how science simplifies our understanding of how the universe might be formed. Because previously, before we went through this discussion, there was a huge amount of energy to explain. But now, having gone through this explanation, you can see that there is no energy. Whoever made the universe trusted humanity with zero energy. But also, no longer do we have to ask where it all came from, because there isn't any. It looks as though there is. Next. Before the universe was formed, there was no energy. It was absolute emptiness. Now we've got energy, which is still zero. Next. So when the universe was created or came into existence, nothing had to change. Indolence is at the root of the creation, as well as at the root of the laws of nature. What other laws of nature might emerge from indolence, from doing nothing? Well, if instead of talking about space, instead of talking about time being uniform, we turn our attention to space. And when space comes into existence, it also inherits the uniformity of absolutely nothing, then space itself on a cosmic scale is also uniform. And by Noether's theorem, the consequence of the uniformity of space is the conservation of linear momentum. So linear momentum springs from, the conservation of linear momentum springs from the uniformity of space on a cosmic scale. Remember that I also said that absolutely nothing is isotropic. So when the isotropy of absolutely nothing is inherited in the newly formed universe, there is another symmetry, that space-time is symmetrical, is isotropic. And the consequence of that isotropy is the conservation of angular momentum. So you can begin to see that the great laws that underlie classical physics, the conservation of energy, conservation of linear momentum, the conservation of angular momentum, all spring from the inheritance of the uniformity of absolutely nothing when the universe comes into existence. So indolence really underlies almost the whole of classical physics. There's experimental evidence for this conservation of angular momentum, yes, because if you look at the rotation of galaxies, then they are rotating almost at random, and the total angular momentum of the observed universe is zero. So before the creation, absolutely nothing had no angular momentum. Now, in this world, newly formed world, the total angular momentum is still absolutely zero. No one had to put their shoulder to the universe and start it rotating. There is no angular momentum in the universe globally. There is only local angular momentum. Next. So when the founders of thermodynamics were studying, people like Joule and Kelvin were studying the conservation of, the conversion of work into heat and establishing the conservation of energy. What they did not know they were doing was that they were studying the symmetry of space-time. And I think it's rather wonderful for you who are becoming scientists to know that you can take a very broad view of what you are doing. Science really opens your eyes to things that you might never have thought about. Next. What about anarchy? What about laws of nature that spring from allowing absolutely everything to happen? And I shall take a very simple law, but it's of profound importance as I shall unfold, that light travels in straight lines. Very simple law of nature. Next. Next one. So, in other words, light takes, well, more formally, it chooses the path of least time through the medium. But there's a puzzle there, because next, suppose light started out from that point on the left and realized halfway through its journey that it had made the wrong decision, that it had taken a path that was not the path of least time. What could it do about it? How does the light know in advance, before it reaches its destination, that it has actually chosen the path of least time? And the answer lies in anarchy. Next. Suppose we were to consider an arbitrary path between A and B, the source and the destination. And light, of course, is a wave motion. And we were to consider next a neighbouring path. Then you can see that the phase of the two paths are very different. One more. And next. Take another neighbouring path. Next. And you can see that, as I've represented on the left, that all the phases are very different. So because all the phases of the rays are different at this point, they interfere destructively and wash each other out. But suppose you go to a straight line. There is the path. And look at its neighbour. You see that the phases are very similar. And put in another path. And still, all the phases are very similar. So that straight line path at the top does not have neighbours that destructively interfere. So in other words, if you allow light to travel by any path between the source and the destination, all these paths have neighbours that destroy each other, whereas the path that does not have neighbours that destroy it survives, and so you conclude that light travels in straight lines. So if you allow anything to happen at all, complete anarchy, what you actually get is a law of nature. And of course, this is to generalize this remark to quantum theory. You need to simply realize that before 1927, a particle, say an electron, was like that. But now, after 1927, it's a wave. So the same arguments that I've used for light travelling by the least path of least time apply also to particles travelling. Technicalities that you have to replace least time by least action. Sorry, go back one. Back. You can't go back. Go back. Yeah. The wave on the right behaves exactly like the light. And curved paths have neighbours that destroy, whereas straight line paths have neighbours that do not destroy. And so particles, even if you presume that they can go anywhere, turn out to be travelling in straight lines. So really, the whole of quantum theory is beginning to emerge from allowing total anarchy. Next. The only things that you need to know about quantum theory today is really that the amplitude of that wave gives you the probability density of finding the particle somewhere in a region. You all know that you take the wave function, you take its square, and that gives you a probability density. Next. So this particle has a lower probability of finding it there. Next. If there is zero wave amplitude anywhere, then you have zero probability of finding the particle there. So that's going to be central to the next few remarks I want to make. Next. So we'll go on to the next bit. This is just classical mechanics. So in other words, what we're getting is, through the work of, by realizing that anarchy underlies the propagation of waves, we're getting all the classical mechanics of Lagrange and Newton, and the quantum mechanics of Heisenberg, Schrödinger, and in due course, Dirac. So this really is at the root of all the physics that you are ever likely to do. Anarchy rules. It's very interesting to think whether that also applies in much more general terms to societies. If you allow anything to happen, then this is only the societies that have rules of behaviour emerge as stable entities. The rest destroy each other. Okay, back to quantum theory and the fact that the amplitude of this wave gives you the probability density of finding a particle somewhere. Next. I want to tell you about gauge theory. What do I mean by gauge theories? Gauge theories are at the heart of modern theories of fundamental forces. They seek to explain electromagnetism, they seek to explain the weak force, the strong force, and so on. And so I need just to tell you what I mean by a gauge theory. And what do I mean by a gauge? Well, I mean a ruler, that's all. So there is a gauge, and what I'm going to talk about is really the relation between waves and the rulers that we use in order to measure them. Next. You can see that if I take that blue wave and I move it along a bit, that is, I do a gauge transformation, I've shifted it relative to the ruler, then nothing changes. The amplitude remains the same. So the probability of finding the particle in a particular position also remains the same. So I can slide that wave backwards and forwards along the x-axis. And because it's a helix like that, the amplitude is the same everywhere, and I cannot detect the change. Next. So this is called gauge invariance, that I can change the phase of the wave globally, and no observations will change. Wave functions are gauge invariant. There's no starting point for waves. Springing out of that absolutely nothing, there was no starting point that pinned down the center of the universe. So we are free to move the waves as we want. So consider a cubic box in space-time. And you can see that the wave comes in one side and the wave leaves the other side. And just as much comes into that box as departs from the box on the opposite wall. So the probability of finding the electron, for example, inside the box remains the same. So the charge remains the same. So a consequence of gauge invariance is that charge is conserved. One of the laws of electromagnetism is that you can't destroy electric charge. And it really springs from the invariance of the amplitude to changes of phase. Next. Experimental evidence for that. If you measure the total charge of absolutely nothing, then obviously it is zero. That was before the universe came into existence. When the universe came into existence, that is the current universe, there is charge. I've represented positive charge by the plus dots and the negative charge by the green dots. We know there is electric charge, but we also know that the total charge of the universe is zero. We know that experimentally, because if there was an imbalance of electric charge in the universe, then the electric force is so great, so much greater than the force of gravity, that the universe would be blasted apart before gravity had the time to hold it together. Electromagnetism is far, far stronger their gravity. So we also know that when the universe came into existence, charge was not created. It was simply divided into its two opposites. Just like energy was not created, it was just separated into its two opposites. Just like angular momentum was not created, it was just separated into its two opposites. The event that accompanied the creation of the universe was simply the separation of absolutely nothing into its opposites. And I think what science has done there is to simplify the questions that have to be asked about the origin of the universe. It is no longer the question of how was all that stuff made. It is now a much simpler question, in my view, how was nothing separated into its opposites. Next. This always, as you know, satisfies the Schrödinger equation. And that's enough of the Schrödinger equation that you need to know. I mean, all of you know the Schrödinger equation, but I've summarized it in that blue rectangle. Now, suppose I shift the phase and do a gauge transformation. The new golden wave still satisfies the same Schrödinger equation. Next slide. But if I change the phase locally, as I no longer am I shifting the blue one uniformly in bulk along, but I'm shifting each little bit of the curve by different amounts. That is, I'm making local gauge transformations. That golden wave no longer satisfies the Schrödinger equation. But it still gives you the same physics, because the amplitude of that helix is unchanged. So the probability of finding a particle in any particular region remains exactly the same as for the blue wave. So you've got another invariance here. But this is local gauge invariance, where the phase is changed locally rather than globally. But that, as I point out, that golden wave no longer satisfies the Schrödinger equation. What you have to do is to add a little bit more to the Schrödinger equation. And the amazing thing is that that extra little bit that you have to add is simply the Maxwell equations. So in other words, local gauge invariance gives you rise to the equations that underlie electromagnetism. Next. So what we've now discovered is that the whole of electromagnetism actually also emerges from the fact that there is no starting point in the universe, and that you can make local gauge transformations and still get the same physics. And out of that, of course, comes the whole, and the next, comes the whole of electromagnetism. So the modern world really is sprung from the local gauge invariance of the waves that represent matter. Okay, the role of ignorance. I'm running out of time. Let's skip this one. I will skip the role of ignorance. That's the role. Except to say that ignorance can be a very powerful, constructive procedure. And I would, if I'd had time, I would have talked about Hooke's law. Go ahead. And the gas laws. Let me go on one more. The one very important aspect of ignorance, of course, is the Boltzmann distribution. The Boltzmann distribution, as you all know, really underlines the whole of physics and chemistry. So how does it arise? it arises through ignorance. I'll do a lot of it. So, suppose I were just to toss balls onto an array of energy levels, then I might get that distribution, but it's exceedingly improbable. You can imagine Boltzmann lying in his office, tossing his books onto his bookshelves. It's very unlikely that he'd get them all on the same shelf. He did it again, and he had time to spare. Go on. And he might have got this distribution, much more probable than the first one I showed you, but still very rare. But then, again, he had time to do it trillions of times, of course. And the distribution that came up more often, overwhelmingly more often than the other two that I showed, or any other distribution, is this one, which is the Boltzmann distribution. So, which of course is an exponential expression of that kind. And the wonderful thing about this is that through ignorance, we now have an understanding of temperature, because T in this expression is simply the parameter that tells you the spread of distributions. Go with next. I won't talk about Tether-Bands. Next one. Yeah, next. So in other words, if T is a large value, then populations reach up to high energies, and if T has a low energy, then a low value, then of course the populations are confined to low levels. So the Boltzmann distribution summarizes chemistry, because at low temperatures you have the stability of materials, that everything is in the low energy levels. But you heat it up, you raise the temperature, the Boltzmann distribution reaches up into the high energy levels, and as a consequence you get chemical reactions taking place. So I think Boltzmann illuminates great swathes of chemistry, and of course physics. Back to this picture again, what we have to think about is why anything happens at all. And the final law of nature that I have time to talk about today is concerned with why anything happens. And of course, the reason why anything happens is summarized by the Second Law of Thermodynamics. I mean, people think that the Second Law of Thermodynamics is very sophisticated and complicated. But of course, all it says is that things get worse. And I think what you then have to explore is how subtly the things can get worse. And you all know that this does not happen next and again and again. I mean, things don't get better spontaneously next. The natural direction next. The natural direction of change is for energy and matter to disperse in disorder. So the second law is all about just this random decay of the world. But this random decay of the world can have glorious consequences. I've summarized the second law there, that I might have a compact region of matter or energy. The natural tendency, of course, is for it to decay and disperse in disorder. But I might have a mechanism next that can connect to this dispersal and drive the emergence of order out of disorder. So locally, there may be emergence of order, but globally, the universe is becoming more disorder. So, for instance, the blob on the left-hand side might be a hydrocarbon fuel, which burns in an internal combustion engine. And the hydrogen and the water and the carbon dioxide molecules disperse in disorder. And the energy released in the combustion also disperses in disorder. These might be the actual components of the engine. And this, on the left, might be next a pile of stones, which next are being built into a cathedral. So we have structures emerging, even though the world globally is becoming more disordered. That's the point of the second law. I mean, I think I'm desperately sad for the billions of corpses that lie in graves throughout the world. Those corpses of people who never encountered the second law of thermodynamics, because it illuminates things in such a wonderful way. Go on. Next. On the left, this could be breakfast. And on the process of dispersal could be a digestive system. And the machinery might be the metabolic processes going on inside your body. And not bricks this time, but amino acids, which as you digest, so these combine into proteins. And so as you eat, so your body forms. Globally, there is disorder. But locally, there may be temporary emergencies of order. So, in other words, what we've done is to track the process of dispersal of energy in the sun as a result of the fusion processes taking place there, spreading the radiation and energy throughout the solar system. Its capture on Earth, driving order in the form of photosynthesis, and then the consumption of the products of the biosphere in ourselves to lead to proteins and the emergence of organs. So all you are local abatements of chaos. The world has paid the price for all of you emerging. The world has become more chaotic, but each one of you is a local abatement of chaos. So what I've tried to do in this talk, and I now have to come to an end, is try to show you that the origin of the laws of nature can be extraordinarily simple, that originally absolutely nothing, the newly formed universe inherits the uniformity and symmetry of absolutely nothing, and you get the great laws of conservation of energy, conservation of linear momentum and angular momentum, conservation of charge. And out of that also emerges, and if indolence is not enough for you, then anarchy also allows you to account for the laws of classical mechanics and, in due course, quantum mechanics, and indeed of electromagnetism. And allowing ignorance to come into play gives you the Boltzmann distribution, which is the crucial law for understanding the role of temperature in physics, in chemistry, and indeed, of course, in biology. And through the second law, when things just fall apart, getting worse, with no guidance, but just dispersing, but giving rise, but dispersing in a very subtle way, giving rise to local abatements and chaos, you can account for this extraordinarily beautiful, wonderful world. But thank you very much.
Any questions?
Professor Atkins, you have said that the horizontal line of energy that we have to put can be around zero. Stephen Hawking used to talk about an idea of negative energy. Do you think that this concept is important to explain the equal zero, the total energy is zero?
Well, I think not really. I think the negative energy that I was talking about, the negative contribution was the potential energy of attraction between gravitating bodies. And so it's negative, particularly in a relative sense. The big question, of course, is the nature of dark energy, and about which we know absolutely nothing other than the fact that it seems to exist.
Professor, one more question. You said you kind of have a reason to believe there could be a possibility of having multiples. There are theories out there, say string theory, and perhaps some other theories may lead to potential prediction of multiples. People say it could be inflation. So do you think that since we have no experimental evidence of the existence of multiples, do you think that if we have enough theories that make the same prediction, I'm asking about science, how we do science, if we have theories that sort of converge to the same direction, do you think there's a strong enough
I think you raise a very important point about the future of science and the future of the evidence for scientific theories. And I suppose what comes to mind is something like string theory, where it's very difficult to conceive of experiments that might support it. But if you find in due course that it hasn't yet, but if string theory actually makes predictions that seem to cohere with observation, then you're starting to have to accept string theory, even though you can't test it experimentally. So I think science in the future might be quite different from science currently.
Thank you, Professor.
Due to time constraints, we'll be taking just 2 more questions.
You said that uniformity in space is inherent from uniformity absolutely nothing. My question is that the second law is a fundamentally asymmetric process, that the global entropy only ever increase. Now, in nothing, obviously, the entropy must have been, total entropy must have been zero. So, why the special nature of entropy that absolutely nothing is zero, but in the universe it's only increasing? That is my question.
I don't quite understand the question, but I think if you accept that initially, when there is absolutely nothing, then entropy is zero. When the universe comes into existence, the entropy of the newly formed universe is also zero. And then events then take place which increase entropy. And entropy will never decrease again. So it is always increasing.
But why the special nature for entropy? Why can't we say something about energy and momentum and stuff like that?
Sorry, I don't understand. What's it?
My question is why can't we say something about energy? That energy was, and the universe was started at energy was zero and then it's steadily increasing only.
Yeah.
Why is special thing about entropy?
Well, entropy is a measure of the disorder of the universe. That's all. And so if the disorder of the universe is increasing continuously, so entropy is increasing. And the Victorian scientists had great tolerance with the question, the kind of question that you were asking.
A retired US Navy pilot and a retired NASA astronaut, he holds a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from the US Naval Academy, followed by a master's in the same from the US Naval Postgraduate School. Designated a naval aviator in 1981, he has flown more than 7,000 hours in 50 different aircrafts. Selected to be a NASA astronaut in 1998, he was part of a mission that delivered the Japanese experiment module and the Canadian Special Purpose Dexterous Manipulator to the International Space Station. He was also a crew member of the STS-129 mission. He has spent an accumulated time of more than 26 days in space, which also included 5 spacewalks. He retired from NASA to join a Houston-based consulting firm for about 21 years. He is currently the elected mayor of the city of Friendswood in Texas. A result-focused individual who is known to inspire people of all ages and is also an efficient team leader. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here. All right, well, this is my second time at Techkriti'. I was here in 2013. Who was here to see me last time I was here? Oh, it's always the way. Nobody ever comes back for the second time. Okay, well, it is great to be back here, and I've enjoyed very much getting to know the students involved in Techkriti', and of course, meeting my new colleague, Professor Atkins. We're gonna do some shows around the world now together after we've done this. So let me get my pointer out. I'll ask you, who is this guy? Right? That is that's my very first official astronaut picture in 1998 when I became an astronaut. So that's over 20 years ago. This is a little more recent, a little less hair, a little more gray. So we're all aging. Let's see if I can make this work. No. Uh-oh. Trouble. Technology. Somebody's at the door. Which one? No. We're all having the same issue.
Let me talk to you. I was on 2 space shuttle missions, STS-123, STS-129. Let me talk to you today about STS-129, okay? Here's the official crew picture for STS-129. How many people in the audience see this photo and say, wait, there's only 6 members on this crew? I thought the space shuttle could carry 7 people. Did anybody think that? Anybody think that? No, not at all. Okay, the space shuttle, remember the space shuttle? The space shuttle could carry 7 people. But on STS-129, one of our jobs was to go to the space station and bring another American astronaut, Nicole Stott, home. So we had to save an extra seat for her so that we could bring her home. So we had 6 people launching into space. I kind of get a chuckle when I look at this photo because of the 6 members on this crew, 3 of us had launched into space before, and there were 3 brand new people on this mission. It's almost like we were standing there ready for the photo. The cameraman says, okay, I'm ready. And 3 of us said, get away from the rookies. That's what it looks like, right? That's not what we did. If I can advance the slide, I'll talk to you about these people individually. There, okay. This is our commander. This is a guy named Charlie Hobaugh, a U.S. Marine Corps colonel, fighter pilot. We call him Scorch. He's the boss. He's our commander, okay? In space shuttle days, we had a commander and a pilot. The 2 people flying the space shuttle, commander and pilot. So our pilot is a guy named Captain Barry Wilmore, Navy fighter pilot, call sign Butch. So these are the 2 guys in charge. Think of it this way. Scorch is the guy flying the space shuttle. Butch is the guy there at the end of the mission to push the button to make the wheels come down. That's a very important job, right? He's really our co-pilot. I felt very bad. We're all very good friends to this day, and I was having breakfast with Butch a few months ago. I said, Butch, I need to apologize to you. He said, Mike, what do you need to apologize to me for? I said, well, you know, I go around the country, I go around the world, in fact, talking about STS-129. Every time I introduce you on a slide, I say, Butch is the guy that we brought along to push the button to make the wheels come down. He just looked at me and he said, Mike, it was 2 buttons. True statement. I said, I forgot about that. That explains why it took us a year to train you. Thank you. That's me. You already know enough about me. I went to the Naval Academy. You know, we have a couple of military schools in the United States. Navy is one, Army is another one, and I went to Navy, and it's very important that we beat Army in every sport that we play them. So we always say, go Navy, beat Army. So I had that on my cuff checklist. Doing some maintenance while we're working here. This is Leland Melvin, another mission specialist on this crew. Leland is a very smart guy. In fact, Leland grew up in the state of Virginia in the United States. He went to the University of Richmond and he studied chemistry there. He probably used some of Professor Atkins' books at the University of Richmond. He was also a very good American football player. He was such a good wide receiver for the Richmond Spiders football team that he got drafted into the NFL, the National Football League in the United States, to play for a team called the Detroit Lions. Okay, I don't expect you to know about the Detroit Lions, but it is a professional team. Really. Unfortunately, he got injured playing for the Detroit Lions, and they let him go. They released him from the team. He got hired by the Dallas Cowboys. Most people have heard of the Dallas Cowboys. We all know that's a professional football team. He went to the Dallas Cowboys. He played for a short amount of time, but unfortunately he got injured again. After his second injury, they said, Leland, we don't think you're going to have a long career playing professional football because of your chronic hamstring injury issues. So we think you should probably go somewhere else and get a different job. He said, well, okay. I have a chemistry degree. I'll go back and I'll go to work for NASA. We have a research center in Langley, Virginia, and that's where Leland ended up working. And he worked there for about 8 years. During that 8-year time, he went back to school. He got a master's degree in material science. He's an expert in fiber optics, a very smart guy. Then, one day, he decided, hey, I think I'll apply for the astronaut program. Let's go back to me for just a second. I wanted to be an astronaut since I was 8 years old, okay? Growing up, I decided to be an astronaut. I went to the Naval Academy. I became a test pilot. I got this master's degree in engineering, and I pursued this dream of becoming an astronaut. And I applied to NASA 8 times, okay? The 8th time I applied to NASA, I got to Houston for the interview to be an astronaut, and I met Leland Melvin. He was in my interview group to interview to be an astronaut. At that point in time, I had wanted to be an astronaut for about 32 years. Leland had wanted to be an astronaut for about 32 minutes. True. Leland decided one day he had to be an astronaut. Yes, true statement. Fortunately, we both got selected in 1998 to be astronauts. Unfortunately, I don't like Leland very well because, 32 minutes, I had to wait, he's better looking than me, all these reasons. But no, actually, Leland and I are very, very good friends, and it was very fun for us to fly in space together, having been astronaut classmates and getting assigned to the same mission. It was a lot of fun. I like the fact that Leland now, he goes around the country, around the world, and he sort of talks to people, and he says, well, I was a professional football player, that didn't work out, so my backup plan was to be an astronaut. Good to have a backup plan. Oh, thank you. This is Randy Bresnick. Randy Bresnick is another Marine Colonel fighter pilot, call sign Comrade. Randy came to NASA in 2004, actually hired to be a space shuttle pilot astronaut, meaning he was initially getting all that training that Butch was getting to push those buttons to make the wheels come down, and he could have been assigned as a pilot on our mission. But we also gave Randy spacewalk training early in his career as an astronaut, and he did such a good job at the spacewalk training that we said we should put Randy on as mission specialist. In the space shuttle days, we did not allow our commander or our pilot to go out and do a spacewalk because we didn't want them to get injured and not be able to fly us home. So we said, let's put Randy on as a spacewalker, have him do some spacewalks, and that's what we did. And he did a great job, and it was a smart move on NASA's part to do that. Now, in the video that I'm hopefully going to show you, if it works, is you'll see us loading into the space shuttle, and Randy, he's the lucky guy. He gets to go in last. I say lucky because when you're getting ready to go on a space mission, you want to go to the bathroom one more time before you have to get strapped in. And so going in last gave him the extra time to go to the bathroom one more time. As he gets into the space shuttle, he turns around and he looks at the camera. We have a camera in the white room, the room where right next to the hatch. He blows a kiss. That is because the day that we launched into space, his wife was 9 months pregnant. She was about to have her baby, and she was allowed to travel from Houston to Florida to watch us launch only because her doctor traveled with her. And of course, I can see that conversation. Hey, doctor, I want to go watch my husband launch in space. Do you want to go with me? Oh, sure, I want to go to a space shuttle launch. So that's Randy Bresnick. Randy, since this mission, he's been back to the space station for 6 months. He was a commander in the space station for 6 months. So this is Dr. Bobby Satcher. I say Bobby for last because Bobby, by far the smartest guy on this crew. When I first met Bobby, I knew he was a medical doctor. So I asked him, just out of curiosity, Bobby, where did you go for your undergraduate degree? And he said, I went to MIT. And I think most of you know MIT. You know, that's one of the premier hard science and engineering schools in the United States. And I said, wow, I don't really think of medical doctors as people going to MIT. You know, I think if you're going to be a medical doctor, you go somewhere and you study biology or you study pre-med and then you pass the test and you get accepted to medical school and you go forward from that. Well, Bobby said, well, my undergraduate degree is in chemical engineering. I said, oh, that's good reason to go to MIT, it's chemical engineering. He did not tell me that day, he actually has a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT. And then he went to Harvard Medical School. So, in case you don't know, both of those schools in the United States are both in Boston, Massachusetts. So, when I found out that he had a PhD in chemical engineering, I said, Bobby, how did this work? Because you're not old enough to get a PhD in chemical engineering, go to medical school, spend 5 or 6 years in an orthopedic surgery residence, gain that experience, and become selected as an astronaut. You're not old enough. He said, well, you know, after I got my undergraduate degree from MIT and I got accepted to Harvard, MIT would let me come back across town and work in the laboratory on my PhD. I said, so while you're going to Harvard Medical School, you're working on your PhD in chemical engineering at MIT. And he said, yes, basically. I said, man, you got smoke coming out of your ears, you're so smart. When I was a kid growing up, you know, I said I was growing up in Ohio in the United States. My mother was a career nurse. All her life she was a nurse. One day, when I was very young, even before I decided to be an astronaut, my mother told me, Mike, you should go to MIT and become a doctor. That's what she told me. I have no idea. I understand why mothers want their kids to be doctors. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't like the sight of blood. I didn't think I would be a good doctor. I have no idea why she thought I should go to MIT, except maybe some kid down the street was going to MIT and she was impressed with that kid. She thought I should follow in his footsteps. So I did not do either. I did not go to MIT. I did not become a doctor. But I'll tell you this, my mother's favorite astronaut is Bobby Satcher because he did go to MIT and become a doctor. But this is Nicole Stott. Just a quick picture of Nicole, so when you see the video, you'll recognize her. This is the woman on the space station that we brought home. And this photo was the day that we returned to Earth, and we were getting our orange suits back on, just about to get into our seats for re-entry. Now we'll see if the video works. Go ahead. People ask me if I was ever scared. I was scared, but I'm not sure if the video is going to play or not. No. Skipped over the video. Let's close out this. Let me get it manually. Good job. Okay. So here we are. This is the Space Shuttle Atlantis. This is the vehicle that we flew to space. This is the morning before launch. We're getting the Space Shuttle ready for us. We're all suited up in our orange suits here. Some people will applaud anything. We get into this Astrovan. Astrovan is legendary. It's been taking astronauts to the launch pad for decades. So we ride out to the launch pad, we get out, it's very quiet out there at the launch pad. Nobody wants to be near this rocket full of rocket fuel. We're wandering around looking for the space shuttle. Here it is over here. Here's our commander, Scorch. He goes in first. I went in second, that's me. Here's Butch, our pilot. Here's Leland and Bobby. They're posing for what they hope is not one last picture. And then Randy, blowing a little kiss.
Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis. Mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
It's a pretty wild ride on the space shuttle. Definitely a good way to scare your mother. But when we lift off, those solid rocket boosters light off. We have the space shuttle weighs 3.5 million pounds, but we have 7.5 million pounds of thrust. So when the solid rocket boosters light off, you definitely know you're going somewhere. Just hope it's not Disney World. After about 2 minutes and 10 seconds, these solid rocket boosters would come off. We continue to space on the 3 main engines. Get to space. 8.5 minutes later, we're traveling 17,500 miles an hour. We get out the camera and start making this video. Here's somebody's helmet pad. We had to fire some thrusters to circularize our orbit, so when the thrusters kicked off, that pad comes flying back. Randy makes a nice catch. Leland's down on the middeck, getting changed out of his orange suit into some more comfortable clothing. It takes us about 6 hours to convert this rocket into a spaceship now. We're turning on the galley, turning on the bathroom. That's me. Hard to see. I like to look good, though, so better. Our destination was the International Space Station. And when we first see the space station, when we're in orbit with it, it looks like a really bright star, but as we get closer and closer, it gets bigger and bigger. And when we're right up next to it, it's so big compared to the space shuttle, it looks like the Death Star. This is 28,000 pounds of cargo that we delivered also during the mission, and we did this flip maneuver so that the astronauts on the space station could see our tiles, make sure we didn't have any damaged tile surfaces. And I'll let you listen in here what it takes to get docked, but remember, both vehicles traveling 17,500 miles an hour.
Get ready, Mark. Out the window.
What was my song about?
Ready? 18 inches. 9 inches. Ready, 2 inches. Fire. See initial contact, get captured. No free drift yet. Still steady light.
So we get docked to the space station and we open the hatches and float inside. There were 6 astronauts and cosmonauts already on the space station, so we had this little mini reunion. Now our pilot, Butch, he wanted to capture a video tour of the space station, so he grabbed Jeff Williams, a space station astronaut, with a camera, and they're floating through. This is the Russian end of the space station where the Russians work, and their laboratory and some of their compartments at the Russian end of the space station. Here's where the Russians keep all their junk right here. This is the airlock. We're getting ready for the first spacewalk. This is a Belgian astronaut, that's Frank de Vinne. This is the US laboratory that we're in right now. Here comes Canadian astronaut Bob Thirsk. To the right, you're going to see the European laboratory called Columbus. And to the left is the Japanese laboratory called Kibo, which means hope. Float down through this tunnel, try not to get claustrophobic for a second, and try to figure out which way is up. Jeff Williams has a hard time. Which way is up? Which way? There's our commander. I never see him doing any work. Up to the flight deck of Atlantis, all the controls and displays are powered down while we're docked to the space station here. Our mission entailed doing 3 spacewalks, so we were getting ready, getting the suits ready for the first spacewalk. Here's Bobby and myself with Nicole and Butch in the airlock with us, getting our suits on. You want to have your helmet on nice and tight before you go out in space. I'm ready to go, so. Float outside, beautiful views from outside the space station. I tell the astronauts to stay inside. The views from inside are pretty good. The views from outside are just amazing. Through that full visor, yeah, there's that picture that I showed you, Go Navy, Beat Army. We delivered this S-band antenna, so I'm unbolting this antenna from the sidewall of the space shuttle. Bobby Satcher had the easy job. He is attached to a robotic arm, and they're bringing him over towards me. That's from his helmet camera. Bobby, I think he took a record, 376 still pictures while they were driving him around. And Leland and Butch are inside, maneuvering him, controlling the robotic arm right there, bringing him close enough to me. We hand off the S-band antenna. They took him over to the space station, and I crawled over to the space station, and we attached the antenna outside. This is a reflected view of Bobby, one of the radiators. Randy on this first spacewalk was our quarterback. He's the guy inside, sort of keeping us on track, telling us where we're going next, reminding us of our tool settings. I told you Bobby was an orthopedic surgeon, so we had him do some surgery on some of the robotic arms on the space station. I think the space station now has 7 robotic arms. He's riding around on the largest one, and they're taking him to the various other ones to do some maintenance. You can see he's got a pretty good view of the Earth going by as they move him from one work site to the other. Here they are pulling him up to, that's the Japanese robotic arm right there. And he said, Mike, as an orthopedic surgeon, I could use this same grease gun to fix your knee. I said, I'm okay. They're watching Bobby's helmet camera right there, so they know when he needs to move again. 2 days later, Randy and I did the second spacewalk, so we're back in the airlock, getting ready to get into the suits again. Need help putting your pants on before spacewalk, so Butch and Nicole are helping us again, and there's one of us outside. They asked Randy and I to move this big antenna from one side of the space station to the other, so we're unplugging it and unbolting it. Once we got it down, I carried it over, I put it on my back, carried it over to the other side of the space station, we reattached it. On a later shuttle mission, something called alpha magnetic spectrometer was delivered in, and they plugged that in right there. This is from my helmet camera. I'm looking at Randy, that's his safety tether right there. Here's somebody waving to us from inside the space shuttle. You've heard me call these spacewalks. You don't really walk, you don't use your legs during a spacewalk because you're just floating outside the space station. So it's all climbing hand over hand for 6.5 or 7 hours on the outside. Thankfully, they have all these nice handrails for us to grab onto. We don't really move this fast though because we don't want to fall off. It's 250 miles down, long ways. Here's the entrance to the airlock again. When we were putting this video together, my crewmates insisted that we keep this scene in our video because they laugh at what it takes to get me out of the spacewalk suit. Butch is now standing on my legs. He's holding my sleeves up and he's pushing me down while I kind of wriggle out of the suit. You have to be a kind of contortionist. I'm still not out. There, finally. My shoulder hurts. That's why Leland doesn't play pro football. It's hits like that he didn't want to take anymore. So Nicole was the last person that this is the space station crew on this side. They pushed her over towards us. And here we are departing. Here's the space station going up, going down away.
TCS is good. Good.
That was clear, I got no left.
We've been known to play with our food in space. Leland has squirted some of his water from his drink into the space. It forms a sphere of weightlessness. We didn't have any of those Swedish fish candies to make an aquarium, so we put M&Ms in there. Now it's time to come home. Got our orange seats back on. This is the heads-up display. The pilot and the commander see as they're flying us back. And I told you about Butch's most important job, right? The wheels. Butch, thank you. This was going to be a totally different video if the wheels didn't come down, but Butch found those buttons. Good job. This inset view, that shows how white hot Atlantis is after re-entry. That's a thermal image. And even though that Kennedy Space Center runway is 3 miles long, it's a really long runway. During the space shuttle days, the space shuttle is a heavy glider at the end of a mission, has little bitty wings. We have to fly about twice as fast as an airliner on approach to create enough lift. So we use this drag chute to help us stop. Drag chute comes off at 70 miles an hour, so we're still using the brakes. This is our mission patch that we designed. This is to remind me who I used to work for. So that's, yes, thank you. Let's do it. That's STS-129. We were in space for about 11 days. We orbited the Earth 171 times, and we traveled about 4.5 million miles. I do have a few more slides, just showing some of my other spacewalks. This is STS-129. I can tell on my photos of spacewalks, if I have solid red stripes around my legs, on my shoulder, that's STS-129 because solid red stripes means that's the lead spacewalker, which I was on STS-129. Go ahead. Here's another STS-129 photo of me working outside in the payload bay, getting ready probably to unbolt that antenna, S-band antenna. Go ahead. This is my first launch. This is a picture of the STS-123 launch. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing. The mission that you just saw in the video, we launched at 2:28 p.m. for STS-129. STS-123, we launched at 2:28 a.m. This is kind of an interesting factoid, I guess. Nobody really cares about except I think about it. This is 2:28 in the morning, STS-123. Go ahead. There's getting ready for my very first spacewalk. Notice on STS-123, I was EVA number 3, which has broken red stripes. So you see on my shoulder there, the broken red, and maybe you can see my leg there down, broken red stripes. That's Peggy Whitson. Peggy Whitson holds the record for female time in space. She's been in space 667 days total in her career. Go ahead. So here we are getting ready to go on my first spacewalk, I think, with Rick Linehan was my EV1. He was the lead spacewalker on STS-123. Go ahead. There's Peggy, that's Rick at the top, that's me at the bottom, that's Bob Benken, another spacewalker on STS-123. Don't tell those other guys, Bob Benken's my favorite spacewalk partner, okay? Of the 4 spacewalk partners I've had, I've done 2 spacewalks with Bob, and he's my favorite. Go ahead. There's an STS-123 picture back in the payload bay doing something. Flexing my muscles. And I think that's the last slide. So if you want, we can bring up the lights and do some questions maybe. No questions? Okay, thanks.
Questions?
Be serious.
नहीं यहाँ नहीं नीचे जाइए
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. I heard the questions that you asked Professor Atkins. I'll tell you, people always ask astronauts astronomy questions. So I tell them usually, hey, I'm not an astronomer, I'm an aerospace engineer. I can't really answer your question. So what do? They ask me an aerospace engineering question. I said, well, I can't really answer that either.
You have been to the ISS a few times, I guess. I've heard that NASA has recently been spending a bit of money on understanding the psychology that happens during human spaceflight. And they say it's important for Mars mission. Can you share some of your experiences with us about how it felt departing from home and spending some time changing perspectives and all of that?
Yes, that's a great question. Talking about the psychology of being in space for long periods of time. Even for me, a short duration astronaut, meaning I was not in space for months at a time. My longest mission was 16 days. But even so, you do miss your family, and it's nice to be connected back with family. And so NASA would set up some videos. You know, in 2008, 2009, there was no such thing as Skype. You know Skype now, right? Everybody knows about Skype, but there was no Skype. So the way that we would do it is on the space shuttle in space, we could set up a camera, and we had a screen a video screen, we could see our family. But they had to go to a special room at NASA. Go in the room where there was a camera and a TV, and they could see me, I could see them, and we could get to chat for a few minutes. I don't know how long, already 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. My wife is sitting down here in front. She remembers. So what do you do when you're talking to your family from space? Your kids just say, Dad, flip upside down. Load some M&Ms in front. But my point is, it was important to have that interaction. And now the astronauts that are there for 6 months at a time, they can call home every day. They can be seeing their kids coming home from school every day if they want to, because of the modern technology now that we have Skype and everything is better. It's important because it does. The psychology of long duration missions does weigh on you a little bit, and it's important for us to learn that before we venture to Mars, because that's going to be a really long mission.
Hello, sir. Have you ever been in a dangerous situation out of space? Can you describe anything?
Say that again, please.
Have you ever been in a very dangerous situation out of space? And what did you do in order to reduce that?
Well, I never felt like I was in a very dangerous place in space, believe it or not. I always felt like we were very well trained, even though we had some issues that came up every time you go to space. Nothing works exactly the way it's supposed to. Some little glitches here or there. You have these contingencies, and we planned for those. So I always felt like no matter what was going to happen, we were pretty well prepared for it. So I will tell you this: on my first mission, when you saw us launching in the middle of the night, I was in Randy's position on this crew you just watched. I was on the flight deck. I was sitting between my commander and my pilot, and as soon as we launched, the master caution lights come on. There's this beeping in our headsets telling us there's a problem, and I thought, my gosh, I thought this was going to be a lot easier than being in the simulator, where every day in the simulator is a bad day because something is always happening bad to you in the simulator, so that you're trained and you're ready to handle the emergencies when they come up. So I was sort of thinking, oh, this is going to be great. We're just going to get to watch the space shuttle fly us to space. But no, as soon as we left the launch pad, these master caution light come on, honk, honk, honk. And it's bright because it's dark, of course, in that night launch cockpit. So these bright red lights are flashing in our faces, and my commander reached up, he pushed the button to turn the light off, turn the sound off, so that we could sort of have a little bit of peace and just try to figure out what was going on. But our training was right there, and we knew it wasn't a big issue, and we could deal with it. In fact, our capsule communicator, the Capcom, the guy from Mission Control that talks to us, he said, hey, Endeavor, no issues. We'll deal with that problem once you get to space. So, we are all taking a little bit of a sigh of relief like that. But I always felt like our training had us prepared so well that there was nothing really to be too concerned about. I know you want some death-defying story about where I was. Sorry, I don't have that. My wife's glad I don't have that.
Hello.
Where are you? Oh, back there. Okay.
I'm curious to know, what kind of food you carried when you went to space?
What kind of food?
You carried when you traveled to space?
I took the foods that I liked from the NASA menu. When I was presented with the NASA menu for me to choose what I was going to eat in space, there were over 200 things on the list. Okay, I'm talking about main dish, side course, dessert, snack, drinks, 200 things to choose from. So I had trained a little bit on what NASA's food tasted like. I had tested them. So I picked the things that I knew I liked. And the food was very good. It was like chicken strips, chicken strips in a kind of a sauce was one of the things that I liked. We had smoked turkey. We had chocolate pudding cake, very good one, chocolate pudding cake. Shrimp cocktail, a lot of good foods, and we all picked different foods. All my crewmates, we didn't sit down and have the same meal, all of us. We each had individually selected meals, so we were always eating different things, and so it was all good. Some of it was rehydrated, some of it, the shrimp cocktail, for instance, was launched dehydrated, and we had to add water for it to reconstitute and come back, and then it actually tasted pretty good.
Hello, sir.
Yes, two questions at the same time.
So what exactly are the differences between the orange and white suits you're wearing while taking off and space?
Well, the orange suit is a pressure suit that protects us as we launch. If something happens during our launch and we lose cabin pressure in the space shuttle, that suit will protect us to a certain altitude. It won't do a very good job all the way to space, but it'll do a pretty good job to 100,000 feet or so. So it protects us in case of that problem. It also is a good search and rescue. That's why it's orange. in case we end up somewhere in the world where we didn't plan to be. You know, we had a parachute in the space shuttle. We could jump out of the space shuttle if we really had a problem. We might end up in the Atlantic Ocean. So we wanted to wear bright colors so the helicopter pilots could find us, pick us up. So that's what that suit primarily was for, was to protect us during launch and entry. The white suit, think of the white suit as a one-person spaceship. It's a suit, yes, but really, it is like a one-person spaceship. We get in that suit, go outside in space. It provides everything that we need. It keeps us cool. It has electricity to power the suit, to power the radios. It has oxygen tanks, obviously, and it has a system to pull the CO2 out of the oxygen that we exhale so that we don't get a buildup of CO2 in the suit. So it's really a one-person. It weighs 350 pounds, by the way, so it's a very heavy thing, and it's an amazing piece of equipment. Phenomenal, actually.
Last question.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Last week we had a successful demonstration on one mission of SpaceX Crew Ready. So if we see one side, we have a space shuttle, and then there are 1,000 of buttons and many CFD screens and all that. And one side we have a very clean 4 seats and big touch screen. So what is your opinion on that new crew vehicle design, and in which vehicle you will be more comfortable flying?
Well, I guess it's a little difficult to tell people that we're progressing when we go from a capsule to a space shuttle, back to a capsule. But really, I think we learned during space shuttle days that the space shuttle was sort of an inherently dangerous design, that foam could come off of our tank and, like in Columbia's case, damage the vehicle we lose the crew. So I think going back to the capsule is the best way to go. We've also learned that we don't really need a space shuttle. We don't need a pickup truck to take people and equipment on the same vehicle. We can launch our equipment to space on a different rocket. Once the equipment is in space, then we can launch the crew, and then the crew is obviously on a different type of rocket. You know, human-rated rockets have to be very, very, very safe, right? A cargo rocket does not have to be as expensive and safe as a human-rated rocket. So we save money by sending our equipment on cargo-rated rockets, and then get the people up there afterwards. So I think I'm very proud of the fact that we have SpaceX and Boeing both working on new vehicles. They're both capsules to take our astronauts back to the space station. And space is a great place to be. It's a great business and very bright future going to space. So, hey, thank you guys very much. You've been a great audience, and it's great to be back.
Thank you, sir, for taking all the time to be here with us today. I would again like to request our festival chairman, Professor Sudhir Kamble, to come up on stage and present sir with a memento as a token of our appreciation.
I can't remember which professor gave me a memento last time. Was that you, Professor? Did you give me a memento?
I'm also a professor of aerospace engineering, and I'm not going to ask you a aerospace question.
Please. I might have to come for some remedial training.
Thank you, sirs. We'll be beginning with the KTM bike start show in about 5 minutes, and it is outside the auditorium neighborhood, so please join us for that.